What, we some kind of suicide squad?
I am Iron Man.
You are a toy!
I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
Server Anakin! I have the high ground!
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
I'm simply saying that life, finds a way.
Welcome back to the Big Movie Boys podcast, the only podcast where there's been a murder and one of us is guilty. Spoiler, it's Bob.
Guilty as charged.
I'm your host, Jeremy Baum, and with me as always is Ben, in the kitchen with a knife, Stitch.
I didn't do it.
And Bob, sweater weather Liebel.
Oh boy, is it cold in here.
We're doing a double feature this week where we'll be discussing two movies, Clue and Knives Out. But first, last week we had another Big Movie Boys Presents Who is the Biggest Movie Boi? Which means this week we have a punishment review to be presented. Now, if you missed last week's episode, we're going to tell you how it went. Yet again, Ben retained his title as Biggest Movie Boi.
Back to back. I'm 2-0. I'm on top of the world over here. I'm the Michael Jordan of Big Movie Boy podcast challenges.
I just want to say that I was robbed. I think somehow there was a conspiracy to get me to lose this game as well. I think this is rigged. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what Jeremy's doing to me.
Well, here's the thing, Bob. When are you going to stop guaranteeing victory at the beginning of these challenges? Because you're 0 for 2 so far.
Well, just wait till next time we do it and I guarantee victory and I come out on top.
Well, I look forward to that, but more importantly, I'm looking forward to your review of Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, which admittedly was probably the best of the worst movies on that list. I think you kind of got off easy this time.
I'll say it. This movie was pretty shit, but I had a great time watching it. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I was just like, wow, this ain't shit.
Wait, how long was it again?
2 hours and 17 minutes. You do feel all 2 hours and 17 minutes. It feels like a 2 hour, 17-minute movie, but I had a smile on my face for it.
You got it out of the way pretty early. Didn't you watch it?
I watched it that night. Little do you guys know, I was pretty excited to watch it. Anyway, I guess I'll get to my 500-word essay about it. Fair warning, I wrote this one time. I did not reread anything I wrote. I didn't spell check. I didn't do anything. Just went right through it. I've never read this from the first time I wrote it.
Now, can I ask, did you write it on your phone as well as?
Correct. I wrote it on my phone and watched it on my phone. I use my phone for everything.
You watched it on your phone?
Oh, yeah. Just watch it.
I understand you can turn it. It just seems like a very pleasing way to watch it.
Yeah. Well, I watched it on my phone. That's where I watch all my movies.
For 2 hours and 17 minutes, do you just hold it up or do you have it set up on a water bottle or something?
I'll hold it up just like this right in front of my face. Sometimes I'll lean it against the wall or something. Depends if my arm gets tired. But
I'm also curious then. I mean, this isn't a graded paper or anything. You're not going to lose points with the professor. But how do you know that it's 500 words if you wrote it in your notes app?
In the notes app.
So
Did you count?
No, when I scroll through it, it just looks like a lot of words. Look at that. You see that?
It does look like a lot of words, but I don't think that's official.
That's 2,000 words. That's at least 2,000 words.
We're gonna, after the podcast, stay tuned to the end because we'll add a little extra segment at the end. We're gonna copy and paste that into Word and see how many words is in it.
I guarantee that this is 2,000 words.
And that's a Bob Liebel guarantee.
That's a Bob Liebel guarantee right
We've
there.
never been let down by one of those on the podcast before. Bob, take it away.
All right.
However many words you wrote.
Without further ado, Pirates of the Caribbean 4. I watched this movie stone cold sober on a Monday night, and it's a crying shame I wasn't blackout drunk to fully enjoy it properly. The title of this movie is Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. I literally have no idea what the title means because it doesn't relate to the movie in any way at all. This movie is your generic Pirates of the Caribbean movie, except this time, Jack Sparrow is looking for the Fountain of Youth. Why is he searching for the Fountain of Youth, you might ask? I have no idea. The movie doesn't bother explaining that. Also, there's a heavier emphasis than expected on mermaids. Towards the beginning of the movie, one of Jack Sparrow's fellow pirates is on trial and is about to be hanged, but the judge drops all the charges. Who is this mysterious judge? Why, it's Jack Sparrow himself, dressed up in judge robes and a wig. Him and his pirate pal escape and get snatched up by some British officers and taken to the king. Jack Sparrow pulls some classic Jack Sparrow-isms, and there's a big dramatic copy and paste escape scene from any of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. This doesn't mean it was bad. I actually enjoyed this escape scene, but if you've seen a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Jack later runs into a bar where he starts dueling with his clone. That's right.
Wait, what?
That's right. There's a person dressed as Jack Sparrow pretending to be him, recruiting people for a pirate expedition. Jack Sparrow and Jack Sparrow have a classic pirate sword fight. And at one point, Jack leans in and plants a big old smoocher on imposter Jack Sparrow. But wait, it's actually Penelope Cruz in a beard and wig. So Penelope Cruz and Jack Sparrow used to have a relationship of sorts. It's never really explained, but I didn't see Pirates of the Caribbean 3, so maybe I'm missing something. Jack and Penelope go onto Penelope Cruz's ship, and it turns out she's actually the first mate, and her father is the captain. Her father is a legendary Blackbeard, and he has some unbelievable pirate magic. He can control his pirate ship like it's a car in a Fast and Furious movie. He can also use his sword and make ropes on the ship fly around and grab people, among other things. So they're all on their way to find the Fountain of Youth. It's never explained why. They're just kind of doing it. However, the only way the Fountain of Youth will work is if you also have a mermaid tier. So they go and find a bunch of mermaids. All hell ensues, but at the end of the day, they get their mermaid tier. One of the side characters whose name I do not remember falls in love with the mermaid, and it's implied that they live happily ever after. It was at this point, about an hour and 45 minutes into the movie, that I realized Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom are not in the movie. I was a little upset about that. Don't know where they were. But they find the Fountain of Youth, and a big battle between the British, the Spanish, and the pirates happen, and Penelope Cruz is hurt. And during the battle, she's injured and she's dying. Blackbeard wants to drink from the Fountain of Youth for himself so he can live forever, and not save his dying daughter. But Jack pulls an old switcheroo with the 2 cups, and Penelope Cruz drinks the water from the fountain, and Blackbeard does not. Blackbeard dies, and Penelope Cruz is A-OK. Then the movie basically ends. Jack ends up getting the Black Pearl back for some reason. It wasn't mentioned at all until like the final scene. In closing, this movie was pretty shit, but honestly, I enjoyed myself. If you've enjoyed any of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies in the past, you'll probably get mild enjoyment out of this one. I wouldn't consider this a punishment movie because now I just want to watch all the other ones. The end.
I don't care for the end there. I'm disappointed to hear it wasn't a punishment.
Yeah.
No, I'll be honest. Like, I do want to watch the other ones now. I think I need to see 3
So
because I definitely missed
1
out.
and 2, skipped 3, watched 4.
Yep, and I believe 5 is out,
5 is the last one.
and 6 is coming maybe next summer.
Well, you said you watched it stone cold sober. Did you write that stone cold sober? Because I was a little confused.
I kind of gave up halfway through. I got really into the review, and then I was
Maybe
just
it was
like,
just the story itself, because the mermaid's tear kind of just throws me for a loop.
well, yeah, I was on 1,500 words at that point, and I was just like, I'm well over. I don't need to.
It sounds like this was like an animated Disney movie almost.
It almost
the
felt like it.
mermaid's tear.
Was this a straight to VHS sequel? That
It
wait,
had the
no,
quality of it.
Even though, all right, here's my question because we learned this last week. Did it look like it cost $410 million to make this movie?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, what did that go to? Did Johnny Depp just get $100 million?
You'd assume most of it goes to him, which is crazy. They're saving money without Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley. I was pissed off about that.
Because aren't they like?
And
they're
everyone,
the second and third biggest
oh
stars
no,
of the
and they're in
franchise.
every movie but this one. I had to go in and search it. I was like, because I love Orlando Bloom, like Keira Knightley, and I was like, fuck yeah, like, you know what? Like, and then like it was maybe like 30 minutes in, I was like, okay, like they're gonna come later. And then, like I said, about an hour 45 minutes in, I'm just like, I don't think they're in this movie. So I had to pause it on my phone, go open my Google app, and then had to Google.
Open your Google app.
Yeah, man, I had to close out. I was watching the movie. I can't do 2 things at once.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Do you not use Safari?
I have a Google app. What the fuck do I
Wow.
need Safari for?
He's sponsored by Google, Jared.
So, I'm learning more about your phone habits than I am about the Pirates of the Caribbean.
What other questions do you guys have? Because I did kind of give. I basically ran over the plot very loosely because I was pretty done with the review about halfway through.
I guess like I also watched the first 2, never the third one. And I guess I was a kid, so I was always confused, I guess, by it. Were you confused at all?
I was. The mermaid tier didn't make much sense. Basically,
It rarely does.
So I sort of like didn't explain it well in the review, but the switch up with the cups. Basically, they're looking for Ponce de Leon's 2 chalices.
And one will kill you, and one
The
will...
the way it works is so you have 2 people. They both have water from the fountain. One is the mermaid tier, but the one that drinks the mermaid tier and like takes the life from the other person. So you're taking life from the other person and giving it to the other person to live forever. So
Penelope Cruz's dad was just dead.
that was the switcheroo is he has 2 cups and he's like, okay, like who's gonna live? They're both like Penelope Cruz is gonna die, and Blackbeard basically grabs the cup that's going to make him live forever. And he's like, fuck you, bitch. And like drinks it. But then Jack Sparrow's like, I got you. I knew you were going to do that. I switched to him like, goodbye, motherfucker. And there's actually a whole undertone in this movie. I talked about the character that doesn't have many lines, or I'm sorry, whose name I don't remember.
Yeah.
That ends up with the mermaid. There's like a minor like religious theme that he's religious, and it's like, is Jack Sparrow going to heaven or hell when he dies? Is Blackbeard going to heaven or hell when he dies? Because they're bad people. And it's like, that's it. That's all they talk about it. Like it's like one or two sentences in the movie, but at the end they play it like, oh my God, Blackbeard's going to hell. This is so horrible. Like, and then like the Spanish are there too. They try to destroy the Fountain of Youth because they're just like, only Jesus can save us.
See, that's where like these movies just kind of have an added element where I'm just confused.
It was so unnecessary and it made no sense. That's why I left it out of my review because I couldn't know how to explain it.
Jack Sparrow, didn't he already go to purgatory in the second movie with all, where he's like stranded on the beach with all the rock crabs or whatever? Was that the second movie?
Dude,
definitely wasn't the first one.
No, it wasn't that one.
No, that could be the third, the one I haven't seen.
I don't know if I've ever seen the third.
But this is my other thing. My other
did
thing
they make
is,
a third movie or did they go right to 4?
They did. My other thing is like, what, like, did I have to see the third? Like, there was a lot of stuff that just like kind of happened in the movie without any explanation. I'm just like, maybe it's because I didn't see the third. But at the same time, I'm also thinking, I don't think it was because I didn't see the third. I think they just literally gave no explanation.
Yeah, that's weird if Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom won
I
in this one.
I
but
did
they're
more
in the
research
fifth one.
on my Google app, and they are in every other movie but this one. I don't know what's up. I don't know what the contract dispute was. Maybe they couldn't. I mean, it was $410 billion. Half of that went to Johnny Depp. I don't know how the fuck they're paying Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom. But I guess to put a bow on it, not that bad of a punishment because I think I am going to watch 3 and 5 now. I loved it, actually. I didn't love it. It was a shit movie that you enjoy.
Well, after you watch them, I want a full ranking of the movies.
That'll be your next week's goal.
Okay, no problem.
Come back.
No problem.
With a full ranking of the Pirates franchise. Well, I'm disappointed to hear you didn't hate it, but I was happy to hear your review. I do feel like I'm filled in now. I don't feel any motivation to go watch any more Pirates movies personally. I'll stick with the first one. But now we can talk about a few movies that I did watch and that I do like. We're doing a double feature this week. As I mentioned, we're talking about 2 movies. The first one being Clue, 1985's Clue, and Knives Out just came out last year, 2019. Now, full warning, we are going to be talking spoilers for both movies. I don't think there's any way to break it up into a spoiler-free and spoiler-filled section. So if you haven't seen either of these movies and you don't want them spoiled for you, then
you can skip Clue. If you haven't seen Knives Out, watch Knives Out. But if you haven't seen Clue and that's holding you back from finishing this, you're good.
I disagree, but
I totally agree with Bob.
Disagree with that. I think you should watch both these movies. They're both streaming on Prime right now, so if you have Amazon Prime, you have access to both movies.
I do agree with that. Like, watch both, but you're not gonna.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Clue, this shouldn't hold you back from finishing the podcast.
Yeah.
You're not missing a ton.
But if you have no idea what these movies are, they are mysteries, so they are kind of plot driven. So we will be spoiling, the solution to the crime that gets solved. So that's your warning there. We're going to start by talking about Clue, then we're going to talk about Knives Out, and then we're going to talk about the 2 of them together. But first, why are we talking about these 2 movies, other than the fact that they're both now streaming on Amazon Prime, and that they're just 2 movies that I genuinely enjoy watching? These movies are both part of a subgenre called locked room mysteries, which is a subgenre of the mystery.
Name another locked room mystery movie.
Death by Murder, Murder by Death. I don't remember what it's called, but that's another one.
Murder on the Orient Express?
No, I don't think that's. I mean, It might be. I've never seen that movie, but
I think that is.
Express.
It's the same. It's the same concept.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe it is. Wikipedia defines the locked room mystery as a subgenre in which a crime, almost always murder, is committed in circumstances under which it is seemingly impossible for the perpetrator to commit the crime or evade detection in the course of getting in and out of the crime scene.
Did you guys know that Rush Hour 4 is going to be a locked room mystery?
That's in Clue, you that's the whole thing. How did any of this happen?
Right. So, other than these 2 movies being 34 years apart at the time of their release, I think Clue is kind of pointed to as like the quintessential locked room mystery. This is the one that most people point to, arguably the most popular. Maybe I'm biased there, but I think it is. Knives Out being a more modern take on it, one that kind of subverts the genre entirely. Like I said, I enjoy both of them. I had seen both of them prior to this podcast. But we're going to start with Clue. Actually, no. First, I'm going to ask you guys, had you seen either of these movies prior to watching them this week? If you have, in what order did you see them?
Saw Knives Out. Loved Knives Out. Saw it probably maybe 2 months ago. Clue, I just watched for this podcast.
So you saw Knives Out first, then you watched Clue.
Yep.
Ben, what about you?
Yeah, so I hadn't watched either. I watched Knives Out just after we recorded last week, very intoxicated, and then hadn't seen Clue either, and then watched that one the very next day.
So you both saw Clue after having seen Knives Out.
I hope you don't have a take saying
But
that's why we like Knives Out more than
But
Clue.
I feel like I had seen parts of Clue just because, I don't know, maybe just because, what's his name? Tim Curry? Is he in every movie? He's like the bad guy in every movie in the 80s and 90s. I think I had seen parts of it, but I didn't remember what happened.
You know what the problem could have been? I think you might have played the board game. It sounds so familiar.
That's the one thing I didn't know is that it was based on the board game and not vice versa.
Really?
I really didn't know that.
That's interesting because I feel like if you told me the opposite, I would believe you that the
Right?
movie came first.
You would think like, why would they make a movie on
about
a board game?
You're right. It makes way more
I'm
sense.
sure there's
to
like
do
a
the opposite.
shitty like Ouija board movie, but like just
There is. It's called Ouija board.
okay. There you go.
For me
And I
personally,
saw it in theaters.
Oh my god. Oh man.
I had seen Clue at least a dozen or
I
more
think when
times.
it came out.
Yes, in 1985, I went and saw it in theaters. No, it's a movie I'd seen multiple times growing up. I've seen it multiple times as an adult.
Your parents let you watch that?
It's been on Prime for a while, so I've seen it several times. And then Knives Out I saw in theaters. I saw it again, I don't know, a month or two ago, and then I rewatched it again this
Bob,
week.
you didn't rewatch it.
I didn't
right?
rewatch it. I kind of rolled the dice on this one. I figured that I don't need to rewatch it because I remember a lot about it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I mean we'll put that to the test.
Do you remember who did it?
That part I'm a little foggy on.
So we're gonna start with Clue. We're gonna talk mostly about Clue. Try to keep it contained to Clue for a little bit before we move into
We'll
Knives
try.
Out, and then we'll compare the two. We'll see.
What do you want to start with? Who did it in each one?
We don't need to go right there. We can just kind of talk about the movie more generally. But it sounds to me, did you guys not like it, or did you just not like it as much as Knives Out?
I didn't hate it. I thought it was like an entertaining movie. It definitely wasn't good. I just had like a lot of problems with it, but it didn't make me. I didn't not enjoy this movie. But Knives Out is a far and a
It's
way
the way
better
cleaner
movie.
version of it.
It's just a way better movie.
I guess with Clue, I didn't. Same with Bob. I didn't hate it, but while I was watching it, I was like, "How could that have happened? How could that have happened?" Like bullshit. Just calling bullshit.
It's
on
more.
everything.
It's more like
Jared, don't roll your eyes at me. I understand, but in Knives Out, I never felt that way. I never felt like
they have
that's
bulletproof logic and explanation
It
to
all makes
explain
sense.
everything in Knives Out. Clue kind of leaves it up
And
in the air. Like it's kind of just.
Yeah, and I get Clue being at the end where they give you like the 3 alternate versions and then like the one being the true version. But like, just give me the one true version then. Don't.
I
give
think
me
that's 'cause it's based off the board
I
game,
get
yeah.
that. I understand.
Which I enjoyed that about it actually. I liked that.
Clue, first and foremost, for a movie based on a board game, is so much better than it has any right to be.
That's a good point. I will.
I can
with
agree
that.
on
So
with you
much
on
better
that.
than it has any right to be. If someone's tasked with writing a movie based on the board game Clue, this is the best version that you're gonna get.
I agree.
And I do really like this movie. I think it's super fun, super enjoyable every time I watch it. In the same way that Knives Out is super fun and enjoyable. Yes, I agree. It's the more fun, campy version of it. It's not supposed to be taken as seriously, and I think that's okay because the movie it doesn't take itself seriously.
That's a good point. Also,
It doesn't need the bulletproof logic that Knives Out does because it doesn't ask you to believe
Yeah.
what's happening. It's asking you to
just go along for the
Yeah,
ride.
just have a
Enjoy
good time.
The character. Yeah, but was it actually PG? I know you don't have it written, but
yeah.
It allegedly this movie's PG and whoever
It's a
rated this movie,
1985 PG.
I know
they
Bob,
need to go to prison.
Bob watched it before I did, and I just the whole time I couldn't stop noticing what he noticed. Just how it feels like you're watching a rated R movie, and not a movie meant for people to be seen in a movie theater.
It literally feels like the beginning of this movie is a porno.
That's what I was
like you
trying to
could
talk around.
first 10 minutes of the movie, if at any point somebody whips out their dick, I'm like, that is fitting. That's happening. This is going the way it's supposed to.
No,
The first 10 minutes is just the same poop joke over and over and over again.
Can I say something about that? First time I'm watching it, I tried, because I had seen Knives Out. I was trying to be like detective mode. I was just like, you know what? That dog shit they all stepped in the beginning, that's going to play into the end. That's how they're going to figure out who done it. And it didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything.
That pissed me off.
That just sets up the tone of the movie, I think.
That
Shitty?
It's gonna be a joke.
Silly is what I was going to say. That it's not taking itself too seriously. There's jokes that are kind of built in that I don't necessarily think they pay off at the end, but like I said, they just kind of help set the tone for the whole
Another thing
thing.
with that movie is just I didn't really love any of the characters. There wasn't like a character. What you do?
I mean, I would
You
say
think
that
you're
they're
supposed to-
all just super fun.
I think they're
fun
all
written.
shitty.
Oh, they're fun? Doc Brown's fun to you? Let's talk about him.
What's
Let's
Doc
talk
Brown's
about-
name in the movie again?
He's
Jared should know
Dr.
this.
Plum, right? Or Professor Plum. He's Professor Plum.
Yes.
He's basically a rapist in this movie.
Let me just highlight a few things that Doc Brown
I'm glad you read
does
him down.
in this movie. One, why the fuck is the maid dressed like that? The maid is literally dressed like she's straight out of a porno.
It's a Halloween costume made like
Okay,
sexy maid
I had this
costume.
argument with my girlfriend during this. She goes, "That's what they wore back in those days." I go,
Oh, back in
"Did they really?"
1980s?
I go, "I
This movie is
strongly
set in the
disagree.
50s. If you didn't,
It
catch
is set in
that.
the 50s. I did know that. But
Anyway,
I don't think people ever dress like that.
I
to
hope
actually
not.
clean houses.
Anyway, though, Doc Brown grabs Miss Scarlett's ass right in the beginning of the movie. Right when they pull up to the door, Doc Brown just grabs a big old handful of ass.
Who I thought was Susan Sarandon the whole time I was watching this.
I thought it was Meryl Streep.
This is all within like the first 15 minutes of the movie. Later, when the maid, who is literally like a sneeze away from her boobie popping out, comes up and serves them, Doc Brown literally puts his face right in her breast when she like serves him soup.
I felt
Right in him. He does it
awkward.
more than once.
I felt
too.
very awkward watching that part.
Uncomfortable, and not to mention his character. One of the things, if you've never seen Clue, is that basically all these people are in this mansion because they're all being blackmailed by the same person. The reason Doc Brown is being blackmailed is because he is a doctor. I'm sorry, I keep calling him Doc Brown, but in the movie he's Professor Plum.
But he is Doc Brown.
He's a
It's the same actor. He's not playing the same character.
anyway, he is a psychiatrist or something. I can't remember, but anyway, he's in trouble for sleeping with one of his underage.
I don't think it was underage. I think it was just patience.
Won't
rewatch to find out.
He's sleeping with one of his
I don't
patients.
think it was.
That-
I think
which
it
is
was the
fucked up.
power dynamic that was the issue.
Yeah.
I
He
don't
was
think
sleeping
it
with
was
one of
the
his
age.
patients. He puts his face in the maid's boobies. He grabs Miss Scarlett's ass. Any reason to be sexual and weird in this movie, Doc
Yes.
Brown is pouncing.
Which I don't think that it gets made in 2020, but it did.
It's not gonna be PG. It's gonna be X.
The fact that it
It's
was
gonna be a porno.
PG was wild to me. That made no sense to me.
Another
Jared's
problem
the-
that I have with the movie,
Here we
Jerry.
I feel like
that-
I'm.
This is such your favorite movie. Do you know there's a necrophilia scene?
Yes.
Yeah. This movie
did
is
what?
super cool with groping, super cool with necrophilia.
Mm.
Murder. Everyone's super calm when somebody's murdered. Like, ah, shit, another person's dead. What are we gonna do, guys?
I don't know.
Again.
The logic in this movie, just stay together the whole time and no one else will be murdered. It just seemed like the stupidest thing. Why would you ever split up?
Yeah, that bitch Colonel Mustard was like,
Colonel, yeah.
split up, everybody.
When he did that, I was like, he obviously killed someone. I didn't know, like, I kind of thought it wasn't going to just be one person, but I don't know. That shit pissed me off because you don't split up in these movies. I understand you need it for the movie to go on.
Movie's
but-
got to happen, yeah.
But they address that in the movie as well. Though when they split up, they say, "Well, what if one of us is the murderer?
Well, then we'll find out.
Then we'll find out."
Yeah.
And then
Which is
Peacock-
so stupid.
That leads to one of my argument when I was going to say that they're fun characters. I don't mean the rapey vibes of Christopher Lloyd are fun. I just mean like the dialogue between characters. They're all like caricatures of these people. Like they're all over the top. The dialogue between them is what's fun. That scene where they're talking about splitting up, and Miss Peacock is like, well, "That's a terrible idea because if one of us is the murderer, then they're going to kill whoever their partner is."
Which is bad logic, by the way.
Which is, I mean, it's funny because Miss Peacock is like a crazy, over-the-top lady the whole time. And then Colonel Mustard, who's supposed to be like the, quote-unquote leader, he thinks he's kind of the leader of the group. And he says something along the lines of, "You got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. Any cook will tell you that." And then Miss Peacock is like, "Yeah, but look what happened to the cook." who had died in an earlier. These are great lines, guys.
They are good.
You're trying to sell it.
I mean, maybe not. The delivery might not have been as good, but the lines in the movie are incredible.
We're trying to get. You talked about bad delivery, and I want to bring up another character who made me laugh a few times. Mrs. White.
Miss White.
Miss White. First of all,
I don't actually know
why this movie is PG is astounding to me because her blackmail. She cut her husband's penis off. Do you guys remember that?
Oh yeah, Miss White. All right.
Also, she's probably the worst actress of all time.
She was terrible.
She was bad.
That whole scene where she's just like talking about her face being on fire or whatever. I guess that was all improv.
Oh, really? I couldn't tell at all.
It's the most blatantly improv scene in any movie ever, but I think it's hilarious every time.
We can improv better than that.
No, we can't.
We've proven we can't.
We know we can't because you, the audience, haven't heard our attempts at improving. But
this is what I want to bring up. Do you think you are fighting for this movie more because you watched it as a kid? I feel like maybe if me and Bob watched it when we were 13, we like it more than.
I don't think you should have watched it at 13.
Oh, I agree with that, but I'm just saying because Jeremy watched it when he was younger. Do you think that's why he's a way bigger fan of it?
Probably, I'd agree.
yeah, almost certainly.
I think I would like this movie just as much as you do if I watched it.
I got the nostalgia baked in for sure.
Yeah.
But my argument to you guys would simply be that it doesn't sound like you're just willing to embrace the movie for what it is. And maybe it's because you saw Knives Out first.
But I'm wondering what kind of deep psychological issues you have as a young boy watching a necrophilia murder porno. What happened to you? Like,
Jeremy saw The Maid as a 13-year-old boy, and he said, "This is my favorite movie of all time."
This is Jeremy's favorite movie, and something I don't know what it is yet, but this somehow.
Oh my god! I've never claimed it's my favorite movie.
A little peek behind the curtain. Right before we started recording, Jeremy came up to me, grabbed me really hard by the shoulder.
I learned by watching Chris Lloyd.
This is my favorite fucking movie.
Don't talk shit about it. No, I actually wish I would have watched Clue first, but I was just more excited to watch Knives Out. That's why I didn't watch it first. But I don't think me watching Clue first, I go, oh, that was really good. And then if I would have watched it first, I would have watched Knives Out after and be like, oh, that's a good closed-door mystery movie there.
No, in all seriousness, I'm talking shit about Clue, and we kind of, but like, it was good. It was entertaining. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It wasn't good, but it was entertaining. I did have a good time watching it. The 90-minute runtime helped. It was solid. I mean, it was a good watch. It's free on Prime, so I mean,
yeah, free as long as you pay $13 a month.
Yeah, as long as you've ever ordered anything on the internet, you have a Prime account, so it's free for you.
What I think about if you just watch these two together, it's kind of fun to watch them back to back in any order. It really doesn't matter because you're just seeing the old version and the new version. Jeremy mentioned one other closed door mystery. I could not name any others, so these are the only two that come to mind, and they're fun to watch back to back.
I agree. It's a good almost like a little escape. You're in that world for a minute, trying to figure out what the actual it's a whodunit. You're trying to figure out what actually happened. Yeah, good. Even though Clue is far inferior to Knives Out at the end of the day, Clue's still a good watch. So I'll give it that.
Did you guys spend? Well, Jeremy, you watched it when you were young, but did you watch the movie trying to figure out who it was the whole time? For me, I kind of just watched it letting them guide me towards it. I wasn't trying to guess the whole time.
I did that for Clue, not for Knives Out. Knives Out, I think I tried to.
Yeah.
I was thinking ahead. Clue, I just let it. I just roll with the punches.
What did you guys think of the multiple endings? For the theatrical release, they would only show one ending.
So was it different? It was depending on where you saw it.
It was one of those three endings.
But oh wow,
is all you would see at
the
theatrical
release. There'd be
release.
Fucking riots.
Well, it would be on the internet within minutes of the first showings, but
no, that's true.
So it wasn't until people, unless you went to multiple screenings to see all three endings, it wasn't until it came out.
Which you're notorious for doing that. So if
I would have done
out today, you would have seen all three.
I absolutely would have.
I feel for me, when I watched it, I was annoyed that they gave me three. But we talked about it earlier. But I've never played the board game. I didn't watch this when I was young.
I loved it because it's based off the board game. That ties it in and makes you realize that this is based off.
I agree with
that.
So
I loved the multiple endings actually.
So was the third one what actually happened then? Is that how I'm supposed to interpret it?
It's still, I guess, up for interpretation. I would assume that's what I got out of it.
I think, yes.
You're supposed to leave the theater thinking that's what really happened, but the underlying thing is that
anything could.
I think I was just annoyed with how Tim Curry, the butler, was explaining how everything happened. I'm like, wait, what happened?
He's great in this movie.
He did a really
very
good job.
good.
No,
yeah.
I agree with that. But when he was obviously he was following direction, but I'm just like, wait, what happened? Why did he was going so fast?
That must have been hard,
Like,
especially
shout out
with
to him.
the
Like, yeah.
multiple times they had to go through it with
Yes.
different scenarios. Pretty impressive.
He's so fun to watch. And that's what I mean. More, Tim Curry than Chris Lloyd's character as being someone who's
No.
just fun to watch.
Tim,
We know you like
he's
Chris
great.
Lloyd better.
He's great.
Yeah, I think, like I said towards the beginning, for a movie based on a board game that came out, 1950s? When did Clue come out? I have no idea.
I don't know.
For it to be as good as it was, for the team behind it to clearly take this project seriously, this didn't feel like an assignment that they were given. It seemed like something that they were inspired to create and do as good of a job with it as they could.
Definitely a better movie than Candyland, based off that board game, for me personally.
I mean, and you take away what I've been dogging on it about is the like really over sexualized parts of the movie that are so unnecessary.
It was the 50s, Bob. Different time.
Other than that, I'd say it holds up pretty good. You take out those like over sexualized parts,
You got a 45-minute movie.
Yeah, well, that's true.
So let's move on to Knives Out. Written and directed by Rian Johnson, who we all know from Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. I'm sure we have opinions on that. He also wrote and directed Looper, as well as directing 3 different Breaking Bad episodes, including Ozymandias,
Did not know
the
that.
best episode of Breaking Bad.
Which one is that one again? Is that
Third from final episode,
okay.
which
Wow.
is still rated 10 out of 10 on IMDb. Movie stars,
This guy's real hot cold.
yeah,
Yeah,
the-
Looper was not a rewatchable there.
the most all-star cast ever: Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Ana de Armas. The list goes on and on. I'm sure we'll bring up all the different characters eventually. It came out in November of last year. Something I'll bring up, we're not quite comparing and contrasting the two yet, but on IMDb, they've got very similar scores. Clue had a 7.3, Knives Out had a 7.9.
Really?
However, on Metacritic, Clue has a 39, and Knives Out has an 82.
Me and Bob are big on Metacritic, so that could be a factor.
But yeah, Knives Out, we had all. I mean, it came out less than a year ago, so none of us have seen it more than. I think I've seen it 3 times, which is probably the most out of the 3 of us. But what were you guys' impressions of Knives Out?
I think I just want to address this for any of our repeat listeners. I think this didn't get the love it deserved on the countdown of best movies. For 2019, I think this one should have been in higher consideration because this was a really good movie. I mean, I really liked it.
If I would have watched it before, I think I would have at least brought it up in my top 3.
It was on both our lists,
but it wasn't on mine, obviously.
but it fell by the wayside a little bit. I feel
And
like it didn't get the
2019
love it
was-
deserved.
2019 was such like a popular year where it's like hard to. This wouldn't have been the best movie, but it should have gotten more love, like you said. This was such a fun movie to watch.
100%. In the same way that I think Clue is just an enjoyable watch every single time. I felt that way. I've seen Knives Out now 3 times in the last 6 or 7 months. I could put on Knives Out again right now,
That's
or Clue for that
interesting,
matter, and watch both of them and be fully entertained.
Because the big part of both of these movies is like it's a mystery, so you already know what happens. So when you're rewatching it, are you just getting another aspect? Are you trying to find out, like, trying to solve it before it happens and see, like, oh, look, he did make a mistake?
There's a lot of nuances in Knives Out. I know that.
I feel like for the first time I watched Knives Out, I had that mindset of like trying to stay one step ahead of the story. Obviously for Clue, I don't remember the first time I watched it, but no, I mean Knives Out, the second and third time I watched it, I'm just catching the things I missed the first time or second time for that matter. The stuff that they set up early, that kind of comes back into play later. To me, the reason both these movies are so good is because even when you know the mystery, once you know what happened, they're still just enjoyable, super fun movies to watch.
And that helps that the cast, like, especially Knives Out for me, because like we grew up with more of these actors, but like they're actually like the Chris Evans character is fun to watch. Like
He's great.
Especially compared to Captain America, it's
it's
total night and day.
It's so
really
nice
is.
to see that actually. Like,
he was really fun to watch in this movie, and just what's the woman's actress name again?
Ana de Armas.
See, like I don't know her in anything else, so it was like kind of like a fresh face for me watching her. Like she
similar
did a really good
with
job. in this.
Lakeith Stanfield because I feel like I know him now and we've seen movies with him on the podcast. But first time I saw this movie, I think that was the first time I've seen him. He was a fresh face to me as well.
He was a fun contrast to Daniel Craig's. Like,
Awesome, yeah. If we're gonna talk about Daniel Craig, I guess the only problem I have with the movie,
It's not a problem.
his foghorn
I
leghorn
love it.
accent.
I love it.
It's the worst accent.
Do you think it was his decision, or they were like, "Danny, go for it. Let's
The
see it."
I don't know.
I would have
a feeling
asked him
he's
to go
pushing-
harder.
I have a feeling he was pushing hard to do this accent. But the whole time, I knew he was in the movie, and the first time I watched it, I saw him in the background. I knew he was in the movie.
You didn't know he had that accent.
I did not know. And I was very excited because the character that he was playing, from the way they set it up, where he's in the background just kind of observing, I'm just like, that fits Daniel Craig perfectly when he's going to come in with that smooth British accent. And then I hear fucking
It was like he was trying to be
Hillbilly
the
Jim
KFC.
pop out. Yeah.
He was trying to be the next KFC guy. But.
Yeah, I was like, what? And like, you get used to it by the end of the movie, but wow, the first maybe 20 minutes he's on screen, it's like, Jesus Christ. Like,
I'll admit it's jarring. I remember sitting in the theater. As soon as he starts talking, I just had the biggest smile on my face. I'm like, that's hilarious. I loved it all the way through.
in hindsight, though, looking back on it, I like that it was different. Like, it adds another wrinkle and almost makes the movie funny. And I don't think it was trying to be funny there, but it makes it funny for me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of glad he wasn't just playing the English guy, because it brings in a new element where he's just playing the southern accent. It was funny to me.
It's like they make fun of
just
like
distracts you for a minute. And
they
then you
make
have to
fun
get
of
over it.
tropes though in this movie
Yeah.
for sure. Like that's a common thing. They make fun of movies like Clue, like these closed door mystery movies. They kind of like poke fun at the tropes.
Yeah.
And him being an English like detective would have like they're making fun of the trope, I think, by having him be this absurdly southern like
Yeah.
Aggressively, like
Yeah.
Louisiana Bayou native or whatever. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the kind of the reason we're bringing these two up is because Knives Out is clearly inspired by Clue, clearly inspired by movies like Clue, but it wanted to do its own thing. It wanted to kind of turn the entire genre on its head, tell a unique story that still fit into that, subgenre. They even shout out Clue in the movie. I think Lakeith Stanfield says it looks like he lives in a Clue board. So I mean, he's
when
not.
that happened, I took
Great
a shot because I was like, wow, you have to there.
So it's clearly not, he doesn't hide the fact that he's inspired by those types of movies. But the cast and characters and how well they're written and acted,
Yes.
I will admit,
who wrote the movie?
Ryan Johnson.
Really?
He wrote it too. Wow.
That's what he does. He writes and directs.
Oh right.
He's an auteur. But
I think the reason I like this
Does
movie
he have a drinking
more,
problem?
I hope so.
Was he off the wagon for this one? On the wagon for
I mean, he's a polarizing actor. I'll admit,
Is
I
it
didn't
off
care
the
for
wagon
the last.
or on the wagon when
Okay,
you were
Jerry
drinking again?
Seinfeld.
But I don't know the answer still. You never answered it in that quote.
On the wagon. You're gonna get me way off track.
All right, let's get back to it. Let's get back to
The
it.
reason I like Knives Out way more, I think, is even though Clue does this too, but there's so many twists, and you just have to like go along for the ride. And I think because I watched this movie intoxicated, when he first kills himself, I forget
Christopher
the guy's
Plummer.
name. Yeah, when he dies, I'm just
Harlan.
like,
Marlon Thromby.
Harlan.
Harlan.
Thromby, I think,
Marlon.
right?
Why'd I call him Marlon?
part of me felt like
little drunk.
that was fake. Like I thought he wasn't really dead, and like he was gonna come back at the end, and that was gonna be like the big twist.
Because what this movie does, if you've never seen it, is it instead of the Clue model, the traditional model of you're building up to solving this mystery, they tell you what happens within like the first 30 minutes.
And I did not believe it. I was like, no,
and
that's not
then
true.
you have to make the kind of the choice as the viewer the first time you're watching it. It's like, do I just take whatever they're showing me verbatim? Is that really what happened? Or is stuff going to twist and turn throughout the movie? And it does. And then eventually you kind of realize they did show me the truth, but they only kind of showed me this narrow view of it, so we don't fully understand kind of the implications of it or what led to it until we get to the end. As Daniel Craig explains, it's like a donut, and there's a hole in the middle of the donut.
But then there's an even tinier donut.
But then when he thinks he filled the donut hole with a donut hole, the donut hole has a hole itself.
God.
And he needs another donut hole to fill said hole. So
What? Honestly, though, one of the best parts of the movie, and you touched on it a little bit right there, was just that the way, like, when Lakeith Stanfield is questioning them and they go through their stories, and it's like they show
how
shot
they
by
introduce
shot.
all the characters,
Yeah,
essentially.
but it's cool that like it's like different for each one. Like it's their story, and it's
Right.
like shown differently, like an unreliable narrator almost. Like, I mean, not almost. That's what it is.
And
But
you see that it could have been any one of them because they all have the motive. But
and you don't, yeah, and they all have a motive, and you don't know it yet, and that's part of the reason why the first time you watch it, you start to piece it together.
The way they introduce the characters in Knives Out, again, I think is kind of taking what would have been the traditional trope of, say, in Clue, where Tim Curry basically just introduces every character and their basic backstory. This one allows the characters to you just learn who the characters are based on the story they tell, the version of the story they tell, and how they tell it. And I think that that's probably the better way to do it.
And it says a lot about the character too. Like from the way they're describing what happened, you can sort of pick up on what they're really
see
like.
how they're viewing it and how they're lying,
Mm-hmm.
what their
Based on-
version of the truth, like because they almost believe it because they're trying to get away.
Based on what information they're withholding that other people are telling, or just the inconsistencies between the stories and everything. Yeah, and that's easily one of the best scenes in this movie, in my opinion, pretty early on. I don't know if we have any other Knives Out specific things. I know we've kind of made comparisons already to Clue and Knives Out. Were there any other direct comparisons or contrastions that you guys caught that really stuck out to you that we haven't mentioned already?
I mean, it's clearly you said the Lakeith Stanfield line where he mentions it looking like a clue board. And, like, it's just, like, it's in a mansion, and I feel like the ideal location for one of those closed-door mysteries is a mansion, like a fucking dark mansion like that. But...
like, the difference is here, like, they're allowed to leave. Like, they're leaving, and they're not just
that's what makes
in
it
this
seem
mansion.
more realistic, though.
Like, yeah, because it's an investigation. And when Chris Evans, like, talks to...
Marta.
Is her name Marta?
Marta? Ana de Armas?
Oh, okay, yeah. When he talks to her, like, you fall for it. I don't know if you got, when you were watching it, like I said, I was just like along for the ride, so I wasn't trying to like look into it to be like, oh, he seems sketchy. So I was like, oh, I kind of like this twist, how they're going to work together to like prove her innocence. So I just like how they went different paths. It wasn't just you weren't trying to figure out who did it the whole time. You were just like along for the ride, and just because there were like, I think there was like 4 or 5 different twists in this movie.
It definitely,
like even when like they showed the little spot of blood on her shoe.
Right. Yeah, I think you guys kind of mentioned it already, but in Clue, they are pretty literally like locked in the mansion for most of the movie. In this, it's the birthday party that first brings them all together, and then it's the death and the funeral that kind of keeps them there, and then there's the will reading. So it's like there's these different mechanics that kind of keep them all together.
Which is realistic.
Right. And again, I think the two movies are asking you to do two different things.
Yes.
This one is trying to present a more realistic, believable, this could happen in real life sort of mystery.
And it does an incredible job of it.
It absolutely knocks it out of the park. And in the same way that I think Clue just tries to make a fun, enjoyable, entertaining piece of
I'd say that's the difference
of a
between the
murder
two, though.
mystery. And I think it executes and nails what it set out to do just as well as Knives Out does.
Knives Out is realistic, and like you said, something like that could actually happen. The way they lay it out, it's believable. And Clue is just like campy and fun with a very sexual undertone.
So again, my argument being that they both
I see
excel
that
in
what
they
they're
were
trying to do. But that's where I disagree.
Almost
I think
equally.
Knives Out did a better job.
I think Knives Out was the harder task, and they still exceeded expectations.
Exceeded. That's what I'm
Agreed.
saying. That
Yeah.
It was a harder movie to make, and it exceeded. And obviously it's a better movie. But I'm just saying, if you even just based off what they were going for, I think Knives Out exceeded what it was doing. Clue got to where it was trying to do.
Here's my question, just to kind of like bring it all to an end. What is your out of 10 ranking on Clue and Knives Out? Ben, you go first.
I think Clue for me was probably like a 6. Like I did enjoy watching it. It helped that it was 90 minutes. Like if they try to drag that on any longer, it wouldn't work. But Knives Out was probably like I don't know. That was like a 9 out of 10 for me. 10 out of 10 is like Dark Knight for me. So but this movie was like, I'm actually excited to watch it again sober and like just try to pick up like what was going on the whole time.
It'll be a whole new movie for you. You don't even know who actually
I don't
what
know
actually happened. I mean, for me, I'd 9 out of 10 for both. I truly think that they set what they tried to do. They nailed it in both cases. Very different movies, although in the same subgenre. Very different times.
That's where I disagree. Because
very different times of filmmaking.
They are in the same subgenre. If you had to like only watch one for the rest of your life, like one closed door mystery, which one would you choose? And if you say Clue, then just don't say anything.
Jeremy, I don't know. I've seen a lot of movies from the 80s, and I get that it's set in the 50s. I don't think it's way too over-sexualized for PG. This movie should be PG-13.
You're getting really hung up on that. Okay, they did ratings differently in the 80s than they do it now.
I just picked
What
up
did they do?
Chris
Just
Lloyd did
spin a
lot of,
fucking wheel and it's PG?
Jaws was PG.
Chris Lloyd did a lot of 80s movies set in 50s, huh?
If you're one of the big movie boys listening to this podcast right now, please go and watch Clue and just get your own feel for it. And tweet at us and let us know what you actually think about Doc Brown's dirty deeds. But if I'm going to come back to what we started a discussion with, I agree with Ben completely. I would give Knives Out a 9, and I think I would give Clue about a 6.
I think that's fair. Jeremy's
I think that's fair.
Reverting back to his 13-year-old self when he watches Clue.
So we can officially agree the Big Movie Boy official ranking for both movies is a 9 out of 10. Is that what we... Was that the compromise we just came up with? The only other similarity that stuck out to me upon rewatching both of them back to back, because I've never done that before, that was new for me, was the different like political commentary that they throw into both movies, and obviously it's different, more or less, because the first movie takes place in the 50s, and there's this whole communism element that's tied into a lot of the different characters' backstories, and Tim Curry has the line that communism was a red herring the whole time, or different actors and different endings all repeat that line. So that's, I don't know that they really comment on it so much as acknowledge it. And then there's like other lines about J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI and, just general stuff like that. And then in Knives Out, there's talk about like modern immigration. There's clearly implications that they're talking about Trump and, I don't know, because they're talking to Don Johnson's character about putting his red hat on, and he's asked Ana de Armas to come over, and I love the fact that
they showed it in two different sides where they make it seem like they're good people, and then they clearly are just bad people.
One of my favorite things in Knives Out is John Johnson's character saying Marta's ethnicity 3 different times, and he says 3 different countries.
That was great. That was funny.
I like stuff like that. Like, it's just kind of like, it's not like a main point. Like, even the 16-year-old kid who's like the alt-right troll kid.
Yeah.
And,
that was funny, too.
And Hannah Baker, this movie is in the 13 Reasons Why universe, is like the SJW, gender studies major or whatever. Again, it's not like, they're not necessarily commenting on it, but it's just kind of stuff that's layered throughout there. I think that that's fun. I think that when we watch Knives Out in 34 years,
I picked up the Trump jokes more than like the communism back in Clue, because.
But I think in 34 years when we watch Knives Out, we'll look back on it.
Like, that was funny, because that'll be a big theme I think in a lot of movies. But
yeah, I don't know. Any final thoughts on Clue or Knives Out? Would you at least recommend both of them? Obviously Knives Out, but you would still say it's worth watching Clue?
I would recommend watching Clue first and do it the opposite way of what me and Bob did. Watch Clue first and then Knives Out, and I would be interested to see if like that actually plays a role in how you view Clue.
I agree. Yeah, I think that'd be a good way to do it. Is Clue first, followed by Knives Out.
And you'll see that Jeremy was wrong.
And then you can tweet at me directly. Don't even mention Big Movie Boys or Bob or Ben. Just let me know.
Or you can tag me in it too, and we'll both gang up on Jeremy.
So yeah, if you liked this little double feature segment we did this week, let us know if there's any other movies you'd like us to pair together.
Not gonna do Nanny McPhee,
Next week, 2 big announcements about next week. First of all, we're going to be talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, both the show and M. Night Shyamalan's bastardization.
He made the movie?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
The twist in this one is that it sucks ass.
So we've got that to look forward
excited.
to. We're also going to have a special guest on that episode, which I'm very excited for. So it'll be the first Big Movie Boys.
That is exciting.
With an honorary 4th Big Movie Boy, the first official Big Movie Boy to join the podcast. With all that being said, thank you for listening to this week's episode, and remember, communism was simply a red herring. We'll see you next week. All right, I've got Bob's supposedly 500-word essay here. I'm about to paste it into Word to see how many words it is. Do we want to make any bets? I'm saying it's 380 words.
I will say it's definitely not 500. Bob thinks it's 1,200 or something.
He said 2,000.
2,000.
I'll go with 450. Bob, what do you actually think?
2008.
Here we go. 652 words.
I'm impressed.
It did not look like it.
Next time you lose, you only have to do 350 words then.
I'm about to send you my cat's one. Can we figure out how much that is?
All right, thanks for listening.